out. My name is Lauren Malcolm, and first off, I am super honored just to be able to be up here sharing with you guys, and I feel like there are so many of you in this room that I can learn from and have learned from, and first off, thank you for allowing me to speak to you. And I just want to share my background with you guys a little bit. So I grew up in the church. I'm a Kingdom kid. My parents were converted in Chicago when I was 6 months old. And they raised us in the church. My dad is a physician, but he also did ministry. And when I was 3, we moved to Detroit to be part of the church planting in Detroit. And my dad was continuing his medical training there. And then when I was 6, we moved to LA to start my parents started like a medical zone back then. And I became a disciple when I was 13 because I saw that the world was really empty. And to be honest, too, when I was 10, we moved to Jerusalem to be part of the church planting there. And I got to see where Jesus lived and where he baptized. And I got to go to the Jordan River. And I was too young to understand it all. But I remember thinking, this is what I want. And I remember thinking, wow, this world is so empty when I got back to the United States and saw just how much materialism and even chasing after academia and in school. And I come from a very academically focused family. And I just felt like, man, even in 7th grade, I remember thinking, if this is it, this is like a waste. Like I should just go die. Like why spend so much energy on things that don't matter? And I'm so grateful that God saved me at a young age. I don't know that I would have made it later in life. I think I would have become so caught up in pursuing the world that I don't think I would have gotten it. And at 17, I ended up moving to the University of Georgia, to Athens, Georgia, which is where I attended college. And at that time period, it was 2003. So as many of you guys, or most of you probably know, that was not a shining time in our campus ministries. There weren't exactly a lot of options of even campus ministries to go to that had full-time leaders. And it was a time of like figuring out what do we even as a church believe and what are we going to teach and how are we going to still make disciples. And I remember starting a Bible talk in my freshman dorm with my roommate. It was an all-girls dorm, and it was very loosey-goosey, and whoever could lead it could lead it. But we were trying to do something right. And I learned, again, a lot from mistakes that we made along the way, but we knew we still wanted to have an impact and we wanted to change the world. And I met my husband in college. It took him a little while to figure out that piece, but it's okay because it took me a little while after he figured it out. So I was grateful that he had mercy on me. But we moved to Philadelphia in 2007. And he actually moved there a year before. He worked for Hope Worldwide and ran some of their programs. And then he went into the ministry. And I remember when he went into the ministry, I was like, that's great. You should do it. I'm never, ever doing the ministry, ever. and it really terrified me. To be honest, a lot of the examples I had seen in the ministry, women had burned out and they were sick and they had health issues, and I just felt like I don't want that. And in my pride, to be totally honest too, I wanted a job that people recognized and thought like, oh, I understand what you do. People don't understand what we do. I don't even know how to explain what I do to most people. And so to me, it was really hard coming out of college and, trying to wrap my mind around how do I do this. And my husband and I got married a year later in 2008, and I went into the ministry in 2008, and that's when our ministry in Philadelphia at the time, I think was like 11 or 15 maybe college students, and most of them were at community colleges in the suburbs, and Philadelphia has 300,000 students. Wow. So just to give you an idea in the surrounding area. So anyways, our ministry ended up going from about 11 to about, I think at one point it was like 65. Wow. And it was really amazing to see God grow the ministry. And our church even started meeting on our campus. And it was really, really cool. About 2 years ago, my husband and I decided to move to Penn State, or State College. It's kind of synonymous. Not to be confused with College Station, Texas, which is where Texas A&M is. But most people get the two confused, which is fine. But we live in the middle of nowhere, Pennsylvania, and we love it. It's awesome. But Penn State has about 45,000 students, and we have 5 disciples on campus. And when I got there, there were no girls, and I was 5 months pregnant, walking around this campus like, what in the world am I doing here? Not to mention that, like, the rest of the church hadn't had full-time leadership in 2 years and was really struggling, and it was hard. So, I feel like against my will, God has put me in situations where I have had to choose to build campus ministries and to figure out how to do that. And I say against my will because eventually my will aligns with God, but usually along the way I'm like, I don't want to do it. And the ministry paradigm that my husband and I have come up with is faith, family, and fun. And that's what we are teaching in State College, and that's what I want to share with you guys today. And I'm hoping that this can be practical, but it's also kind of a stream of consciousness of what I've learned from my mistakes and trial and error, to be honest. You can go ahead and turn over to 1 Peter 3. Oh, I forgot to mention, I also have a daughter. I told you I was pregnant when we moved to State College. So I had the baby. She's alive. Thank goodness. And I'm pregnant again with our second child. So that's exciting. And he is due in September. So we'll have one of each. It is a crazy time in life. And just to give you guys an idea of like our life in the past few months, I am part-time. My husband is full-time, and we just bought a house. Wow. And I might be starting a part-time from home job, research position type job, to help with funding. And my husband may be going back to school. So and we're having a second kid. So it's like a crazy, crazy time in our family right now. So I'm sharing a lot of what I'm trying to teach myself too. But let's go ahead and read in 1 Peter 3. It says, "Wives, in the same way, submit yourselves to your own husbands, so that if any of them do not believe the word, they may be won over without words by the behavior of their wives, when they see the purity and reverence of your lives. Your beauty should not come from outward adornment, such as elaborate hairstyles and the wearing of gold jewelry or fine clothes. Rather, it should be that of your inner self, the unfading beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit, which is of great worth in God's sight. For this is the way the holy women of the past who put their hope in God used to adorn themselves. They submitted themselves to their own husbands, like Sarah, who obeyed Abraham and called him her Lord. You are her daughters if you do what is right and do not give way to fear. Husbands, in the same way, be considerate as you live with your wives and treat them with respect as the weaker partner and as heirs with you of the gracious gift of life, so that nothing will hinder your prayers. Finally, all of you be like-minded, be sympathetic, love one another, be compassionate and humble. Do not repay evil with evil or insult with insult. On the contrary, repay evil with blessing, because to this you were called, so that you may inherit a blessing. For whoever would love life and see good days must keep their tongue from evil and their lips from deceitful speech. They must turn from evil and do good. They must seek peace and pursue it. For the eyes of the Lord are on the righteous, and his ears are attentive to their prayer. But the face of the Lord is against those who do evil. Who is going to harm you if you are eager to do good? But even if you should suffer for what is right, you are blessed. Do not fear their threats. Do not be frightened. But in your hearts, revere Christ as Lord. Always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you to give the reason for the hope that you have. But do this with gentleness and respect, keeping a clear conscience, so that those who speak maliciously against your good behavior in Christ may be ashamed of their slander. For it is better, if it is God's will, to suffer for doing good than for doing evil. For Christ also suffered once for sins, the righteous for the unrighteous, to bring you to God. He was put to death in the body, but made alive in the spirit. After being made, he went and made proclamation to the imprisoned spirits, to those who were disobedient long ago, when God waited patiently in the days of Noah while the ark was being built, In it, only a few people, 8 in all, were saved through water. And this water symbolizes baptism that now saves you also. Not the removal of dirt from the body, but the pledge of a clear conscience towards God. It saves you by the resurrection of Jesus Christ, who has gone into heaven and is at God's right hand with angels, authorities, and powers in submission to him. Faith is the cornerstone, the foundation upon which we build every other godly virtue. 2 Peter 1:5 says that. Wow. Without faith, we cannot please God. If there's one quality I want to be known for and to pass on to the next generation, it's my faith. Yeah. And I think a lot of that is because it's the only thing that cannot be taken from me. Yeah. Everything else can be taken from me, but my faith I have to willingly give up. And the truth is, by nature, I'm fearful and a doubter. And I constantly, I mean, this is the Bible I was given when I was appointed a women's ministry leader. And in it, Kim Evans, who appointed me, wrote, "Believe your beliefs and doubt your doubts." Because this is my struggle and this is my battle. Yeah. And I've clung to this scripture because Sarah is such an example to me. And I love this passage. In verse 6, in the NIV, it says, you are her daughters if you do what is right and do not give way to fear. And in other translations, it actually says, without being frightened by fear. And that term, without being frightened, actually means to put to flight or flee. And it's really interesting because our brain's oldest part, which is, I think, called the amygdala, I'm pretty sure, and is responsible for kind of our most basic functioning. You can call it like the dinosaur part of our brain, basically. And it's responsible for that flight, fight, and freeze response. And originally, that was intended, it's an innate reaction to a threat, to protect yourself from harm. And back in earlier times, maybe like, cavemen times or hunter-gatherer times, when that was, survival was much more of a real issue, people needed to rely on those reactions. The challenge for us today is we don't really have the same threats. We're not constantly, running for our lives. And our fears have taken on a much more theoretical or philosophical and emotional realities. And I think as women, our brains are wired to protect because we're moms. We're physiologically, we're meant to be, caretakers. And just as men physiologically are wired to be visual. And I'm not using this as an excuse that we should be fearful, but I think it helps us understand why we are wired this way. And I think in the ministry, we struggle with different fears. Yeah. I know for myself, and I hope Lisa doesn't mind me sharing this. I wonder, am I adequate? Am I fit for the ministry? And I was laughing because Lisa and I were on the phone the other day talking about our lesson, and she was like, I'm not like the typical ministry. Well, I don't know. And I was like, I just started laughing because I'm like, what is the typical women's ministry leader? Like, can someone tell me? It would be so nice if there was a job description posted somewhere that we could all look at. But there's not. And you know what? In this room, there is a plethora of different personalities and gifts and strengths, and that's good, and it should be that way. And we can learn from each other. We don't have to compare. But I think when we compare, we start feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm not enough. I think we worry about job security. And truthfully, in any job, there's insecurity in your job, but I think in the ministry especially, I get the question all the time, well, how do you make money? Who pays your salary? And I wonder that too. I'm like, I think we're going to get paid. I hope. I think for many of you guys who are in the room, you for those of you who aren't married, you're wondering, am I going to find someone who's going to do this with me? Because it does narrow your choices if you want to do the ministry. For those of us who are married, we wonder, are our husbands going to protect us and take care of us? And are they making good decisions? And should that be done that way? And all of those things. I think we also worry about burnout, and we worry about, oh my gosh, can I keep up this level of momentum and this energy and emotionally giving this much, and am I going to survive and enjoy my life? And I think the other thing we can be afraid of is our friendships. Like if I challenge people, are they still going to be my friend? Are they going to talk about me behind my back? Are they going to still be there for me? Are people going to take care of me after I take care of them? And I think our women have the same fears. Yeah. And they might just look a little bit different because they're in a different stage of life. They go on campus, they worry if they're going to be accepted, if they're going to be the weird one because they're sharing their faith when they see that person they just shared with. Are they going to have a future? Are they going to have jobs? Are they going to have husbands? Are they going to be enough? Are they going to be loved? And I think the challenge with fear is that it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Yeah. I was talking to one of the women in our church this week, and we've been studying the Bible with another woman, and she I've been gone for the past 2 weeks because we were on youth corps, and the girl who was studying hadn't been coming to anything and hadn't been getting together with her. And we were talking about, I could kind of tell that the disciple was feeling insecure, like she's not responding to me. And I knew that because I know that this woman really struggles with feeling insecure about her friendships. And she was like, well, maybe if you call her, you text her, she'll come to something. I'm like, I'm not that special. It's not about me. It's, this girl had life stuff going on, but I could tell that this disciple had given into Satan's lies, that she was the problem, that she was doing something wrong. And it's not even about her. And that's the problem with fear. When we give into fear, we're giving into Satan's lies. What fears, on that same point. Because of that, though, she had pulled back her heart. And that's the problem. It does become a self-fulfilling prophecy because you stop connecting with people because you fear that you're not good at connecting. Come on, Lord. What fears are keeping you from being a woman of faith? I think we have to be honest with our fears because it's the only way that we're going to grow. And it's the only way that our women are going to feel close to us is if they know the things that we're struggling with. And it's the only way they're going to fight for their faith. Yeah. And the amazing thing is Sarah had plenty of reasons to be afraid. The Bible even says that do not be frightened of fear. There are legitimate reasons to be afraid sometimes. She left her homeland. This is not in an era where you could easily travel back to your family. Yeah. It's hard for me being on the East Coast and my family's in LA and I can fly back. I can't imagine leaving my homeland and never being able to go back. Wow. Her husband gave her away not once but twice. To other men while married. Talk about having reasons to question your husband's judgment. Yeah. I mean, she had some good reasons. Yeah. Another thing is she was pregnant at 99. On so many levels. I mean, I get fearful as an almost 30-year-old being pregnant of, oh my gosh, is the baby going to be okay? Am I going to lose the baby? Is something going to happen? How's the labor going to go? I can only imagine she had probably been pregnant before and lost babies and had miscarriages. I can't even imagine how much she must have felt the fears of, is this one really going to survive? Am I going to make it? Am I going to live past the labor and delivery? In that era, I mean, that was a big deal. And her faith was far from perfect. You think about how she convinced her husband to sleep with her maidservant to have a child for her, and that obviously didn't work out very well. But it's crazy to me because she is held up as an example. Yeah. And so she must have overcome her fears and become a woman of faith. And even in spite of her mistakes, she shows us that there's hope. And I believe that the key to faith and her faith is having a reverent fear of God. And I think that's the only way we can overcome our fears. In Psalm 34, you don't have to turn there. I'm just going to go ahead and read it. In verses 4 through 7, it says, I sought the Lord and he answered me. He delivered me from all my fears. Those who look to him are radiant. Their faces are never covered with shame. This poor man called and the Lord heard him. He saved him out of all his troubles. The angel of the Lord encamps around those who fear him and he delivers them. To be women of faith, we need to fear the right thing. Yeah. We need to fear God, not people. What inspires you to stand in awe of God? Maybe it's a prayer journal and recording your prayers. Maybe it's going to the ocean or the mountains, or maybe it's a chair in your bedroom. I don't know what it is, but whatever it is, you have to do that. You have to stay inspired. We need to fear God and not our male counterparts. And in 1 Peter 3:1, it says, in the same way, wives, be submissive. Well, if you go back and look in chapter 2, it talks about submit yourselves for the Lord's sake in verse 13. And in verse 18, it talks about slaves in reverent fear, submitting yourselves. Peter was challenging them to submit to worldly authorities who are harsh and cruel, we have no excuse. Our submission is a direct reflection of our faith in God. This doesn't mean we don't offer ideas, but if you don't have a better idea, just don't say anything. Know your husband or your counterpart's weakness and offer suggestions and solutions, not critique him. The thing with men is when we express concerns with fear and anxiety, they respond and they shut down. They can't hear it. But if we express it faithfully and joyfully, they're able to actually absorb what we're saying. So pray before you bring up things that you are concerned about. And requests work a lot better than hints. And I am like the queen of hinting around what I think. So would you consider X versus I wonder about this is a lot more effective at communicating what you actually think, because he won't pick up on that nuance. And then you won't be angry afterwards because you felt like you expressed yourself. Accept that you are weaker. And even, Lisa talked about this. I tried staying up with my husband at night. It's crazy for me to try to stay on his schedule. It takes faith to do that sometimes. We need to not be self-reliant and try to keep up with them. Have faith that God has you with your counterpart. Our faith is our most treasured possession. Don't let Satan steal it. My second point is family. The purpose of family in the world is procreation. When you think about it, like this is how the world goes on creating. It's how we take care of needs. It's how we train and teach. The challenge today is that family is disintegrating. In the United States, 50% of all North American children will witness the divorce of their parents. Almost half of them will also see the breakup of a parent's second marriage. The church needs to be a model of family to a lost world. It's how we're going to grow and how we're going to train up leaders. God takes care of us through families. In Psalm 68:6, it says he sets the lonely in families. It's interesting to me that the only great example of female relationships in the Bible are Naomi and Ruth, really, and Mary and Elizabeth, and they were all familial relationships. Women especially need help with their relationships. Let's just be honest. We're contentious. And you see that in the Bible. Most of the time it's like warning the women to get along. In verse 8 of 1 Peter chapter 3, we read this. It talks about being like-minded. That is really hard to do because none of our two minds are alike. And if you're married, you understand that. But even with women, it's hard. It's impossible without God. But we have to teach our women how to handle hurt and conflict in a godly way. And to not be deceitful with their lips and not gossip and not lie and not get around, the things they feel. We have to help them with bitterness and resentment and teach them how to work through their hurt in a healthy way. And we have to do this, I think, by befriending our women. Because the way that we're going to teach friendship is by showing them how to do it, by exemplifying it. Some ideas that we put into practice when we were in Philadelphia, and even some now, are doing freshman breakfasts with your students the first month of the semester, doing big brothers, big sisters, pairing up your freshmen with incoming people, having leaders meetings at our house and having dinner as part of it, having shepherding couples assigned to Bible talk leaders or to Bible talks, having the older members of the church cook for the campus students, once a semester, and connecting students with families at holidays. And all these things help build family. It doesn't have to all be on us. We can get the rest of the church. It's actually better if we get the rest of the church involved. And when you're building friendship and family, you build memories and a sense of fun. Yeah. And that's my last point. In verse 13, it says, even if you should suffer for doing good, you're blessed. And blessed just means happy. We have an eternity of no pain or tears. Shouldn't our lives on earth reflect that joy? Yeah. I think as women, we tend towards being task-oriented, and we see the issues in the ministry. Guess what? So does probably everybody else. We're not unique in that. But we need to have fun. We need to enjoy what we do. How will women want to follow us if we seem burdened and miserable all the time? In Proverbs 31, it talks about how the woman of noble character laughed at the days to come. And I love that scripture because it's not naturally me. But do you exude a spirit of joy? Make fun a priority in your schedule. And I'm not saying that as an exception to working hard. Obviously, we need to work hard, but prioritize fun. I think a lot of us probably can go to the extreme of working so hard that we're not enjoying life, and we're not teaching our women to enjoy their lives. And some ideas just for having fun. I mean, a lot of you guys are probably already doing these things, but parties are great, Celebrate holidays, Halloween, Christmas, have an end-of-the-year banquet. We did this thing called Foursquare Fridays at Temple University where we play Foursquare, and Foursquare's like the easiest game in the world, but people love it. It's kind of like the new hipster game. I don't know. We did Mission Impossible challenges, or Mission Possible challenges with our Bible Talk leaders, where we gave everyone a mission each week that they had to fulfill. We talked about it, and it was fun. It made evangelism fun and not like, oh, I've got to go do this, Doing tailgates and going to sports games, participating in things on campus. Those are fun activities. Do them. Have fun icebreakers and Bible talks and devotional. At your Bible talks and devotionals. So, in conclusion to all that, by dealing with our fears and teaching godly friendships and being women who enjoy what we're doing, we will build ministries of faith, family, and fun. That's all I got.